Greetings, everyone. Cryptodamus here, your favorite cryptocurrency financial astrologer. Thanks for joining us on my YouTube channel today. I've got an old friend of mine, fantastic, very brilliant astrologer, Gemini Brett today. How are you doing? How are you doing, Brett?
Solid. It's good to see you, Robert. I mean, good, all things considered. In our own little bubble here, the world is crazy, but it's definitely interesting times to be an astrologer, to be a human being and a witness of the weird.
Right
And
on,
yourself?
man. Thanks for joining us. Brett is going to talk about, specifically, we're going to talk about Venus Cazimi, which is coming up on October 21st, 22nd. And it's the first Venus Cazimi in Libra in like 200 years, roughly, something like that. And I think the synodic cycle of Venus is actually one of the things that Gemini Brett is really good at. It's been studying for a long time. He's a traditional and a modern astrologer, and he's been practicing astrology for over a decade. And he's also kind of known for his love of astronomy and trying to bring astronomy and astrology, or trying to bring astrologers back to the astronomical and appreciating the planets as they're moving through the sky. So I'm really happy to have him today. Brett and I used to do actually in-person astrology talks like 10 years ago or so here together. We did a couple of those together in Seattle, and that was always really fun. So it's really cool to unite with him here on my YouTube channel. And yeah, let's get into this Venus Cazimi. So kazimi, for some people who may not know, means an exact conjunction with the sun, otherwise known as in the heart of the sun. As we go into the kazimi period, the planet, in this case Venus, is usually what we call combust the sun, or under the rays of the sun, and that's an kind of unfavorable, difficult position because astronomically you cannot see the planet. It's not visible in the sky, and so in traditional astrology, at least, that planet was considered to be in a weakened state. And I know Hellenistic astrologers believe or say that when a planet is combust, it's actually that planet is the principle of that planet, in this case, Venus, which has to do with all the good things in life, the sweetness of life, love, money, wealth, sex, all the good things in life, luxuries, the good living, beautiful things, art and beauty, also, and creativity. When they go into combustion, those things are weakened. Those things become more difficult, more challenging. However, when it becomes kazimi to the sun, in the heart of the sun, it has superpowers for that particular period of time, which is anywhere from a couple of days to a couple of hours, depending on the planet. And there's different definitions of kazimi too, which we'll talk about in a bit. And I'm just going to flip into my astrology software here for a minute. This is the Luna Cloud, Luna Astrology. And so you can see right around here, actually, which is, let me see, right on the 16th, I guess you could say, you know, Venus is really in the kind of maximum combustion to the sun. It's about 1.5 degrees away from the sun. So that's really the kind of the worst position for a planet to be. And now that continues really up until about the 17th, 18th or so. But then right around the 18th, 19th, it starts to go under 1 degree in a conjunction to the sun. And in the Hellenistic tradition, that's considered to be kazimi, as under 1 degree orb, so sub 1 degree. So we can say that kazimi starts right around the 19th of October, which is next week. However, there's the more medieval definition of kazimi, and that's going to be like under 0. Or 0.17 minutes of arc, and that's a much more kind of strict definition of kazimi. I tend to go with the Hellenistic definition. I've seen it work. I have seen many times that energetic shift takes place as you get under that 1 degree. Of course, the closer you get to exact, the stronger that effect is going to be. And certainly by the 20th here, we're getting to about 0.5 degree. The 21st, we're getting, I think, we're in the same degree, so that's called partile, and you're already getting within about the medieval definition of kazimi there by the 21st, excuse me. And then Saturday, October 22nd is when they're going to go exact. And so that will be the exact conjunction of Venus and the Sun, and that will be the exact kazimi event. This is a really special one because it's in the sign of Libra. This is the home or domicile of Venus, where it rules with dignity. So you could say in a way that this is a super kazimi, because the planet has both dignity and superpowers by kazimi. So it should be a very special event. It would be perhaps a very favorable for doing some astrology magic around relationships and love, creating love potions, and so forth and so on, especially because Libra is a sign of love and relationships, and of course Venus is the love planet. So this is the first time that we've had the kazimi in Libra since the 1760s, I believe Brett was telling me before we went on the broadcast here. So that's kind of just the basic situation astrologically and to some degree astronomically. So when Venus makes that exact conjunction to the Sun, it has what we call superpowers, but it's actually said to die, and then it will be reborn coming out the other side of the Sun. It will still be combust then, but it will be an infant baby that's kind of gaining strength instead of dying on its deathbed. So the combustion will have a slightly different quality there. So this is one of the most favorable events in Q4. And I think that also right now we have a really nice grand trine with Venus and the Sun. It's making a trine to Mars in Gemini and a trine to Saturn in Aquarius. And those two are also trine. So we have a grand trine here in air, and that's going to lead us into the kazimi period. So I think we're in a somewhat favorable period here for like the next 7 to 10 days or so.
For the next 2 minutes and 12 seconds.
So enjoy it while it lasts, because folks, it's not going to last. Okay, we're going into some really difficult astrology very soon here. But we do, and even with this grand trine in kazimi, Venus is still badly combust. I can feel that. I don't know if you can, but I'm definitely feeling the combustion. So even with that, we still have to deal with this Venus badly combust situation. So even with that, it still has some serious problems.
How do you see the combustion show in the financial markets?
Yeah, well, we were just talking about this. I've seen time and time again in general that the markets don't like combust. They don't like the approaching combustion. And you'll get kind of a bit of a panic in the markets. I've seen this many, many times. The panic will magically stop as the planet goes kazimi. It's kind of amazing. And you'll either get a relief bounce, or at least the panic cell will stop, and then you'll get a flat period there. Now, some people say that a planet with dignity is protected from combust. I am not sure about that.
Yeah.
I think that do you have an opinion about that, Brett?
Well, I mean, like you were saying before, it's like one thing that I love so much about working with cycles is they are so astronomical. And these ideas of a planet losing strength because it's under the beams of the sun, it's a strange thing that when planets get so close to the light, we go blind to them. But in the myths, you'll hear these things like, Mercury was born in a cave. And from his mother Maya of the Pleiades, like I'm sure that's when the Pleiades were with the sun, right? Because that's like at the light is the cave. It's like this blindness. And so modern astrology, in some ways, have kind of forgotten about this. It's just like, oh, the closer to the sun, the better, because it's so sun sign. But also folks start with Pluto these days, who you can never see. So does it matter if Pluto can't be seen? Right. But traditionally, it's a huge deal. And I like the way that you're speaking about it, because there really is that kind of dying and being reborn, like going into the fire, kind of being composted into the soil for the new seeds and whatnot. And For me, it works differently for Venus and Mercury because they're interior planets. Their paths are between Earth and the sun than it does for Mars and Jupiter, right? So, like Mars can have, or does every couple years, have a Sun Mars conjunction, right? Which is Earth, Sun, Mars, like way out there. And Mars is actually more and longer under the beams than any other planet in his cycle. It's the longest cycle with the sun, 780 days. That's because Mars's speed is most similar to Earth's. And therefore, from Earth's point of view, we experience Earth's motion by watching the sun, right? So sun and Mars are most closely matched. So it takes like a long time for the sun to catch up to Mars and take Mars under the beams and then pass Mars by. And when sun does, then Mars will be reborn in the east in the heliacal rise, we call this, when Mars is first visible as a morning star. And then the sun rises and he's gone, but the next day more and more, right? But so Mars, Jupiter, and beyond, they can also experience solar opposition, right? Where the sun and Mars are on opposite sides of the Earth. That can never happen for Mercury or Venus. They always stay close to the sun. Mercury, the most distant in phase angle Mercury can get from the sun, 28 degrees, and for Venus, 48. So they do these different kinds of things. I'm going to show you with my
Well, but do you have an opinion on the whether dignity protects a planet from
Oh yeah,
conjunction?
sorry, I did not answer that. Yeah, I don't think so because I think it really is about this visibility kind of thing. I mean, for me, the dignity, and especially given the truth, as you said before, like this is the first time we've had a Venus conjunction in Libra, and we'll talk about some of the other star points. Like there's a significant changing in the energy over the course of the next few decades from like Venus has been doing this kind of Martian thing into a much more Venusian thing. And I do think that we're going to benefit from that. This is like the introduction to something that's going to take some while to really take hold. So I think the dignity in that standpoint, like it's a really strong place for Venus to be. I'll be super
I
interested
think
to see how the
it seems
markets
to
do.
offset the combustion like a little bit, in my opinion. But the combustion also kind of takes some of that shine, literally, off of the dignity.
Yeah. I mean, so the planets will still have essential dignity, right? That's sign based or spots of signs, but the accidental dignity, and this is one of the many considerations of accidental dignity, of that being said, where we see accidental dignity can often be like what house a planet's in, right? So the essential is kind of like how does a planet do in this particular role, and the accidental like on this particular stage. But importantly, these concepts of under the beams or combust the sun, it's really a global experience. And so in that sense, it's a little bit more like essential, yeah? So yeah, I don't know. That's a hard question to answer. I mean, if I'm looking at a chart and I see Venus in Libra, Venus is in Libra, and yet oftentimes folks who have Venus in Libra so close to the sun that Venus can't be seen, you'll see that it doesn't play like a Libra Venus as much as you might expect. And it's one thing, like I have a lot of my clients are astrologers or students of astrology. They come in like, why doesn't my Venus act like she's in Libra? So, well, there's something here where Venus is going into this combustion, going into this transformation. So importantly with Venus, I'll just show you with my teacup, like if you are the earth and my face is the sun, this is Venus retrograde. So it's Venus passing between Earth and the sun. And this is like a very short period. The retrograde itself is like 40 days and 40 nights, but it's typically a week when Venus as an evening star disappears under the beams of the sun and then has this retrograde kazimi or solar conjunction, and then shortly after reappears as the morning star with heliacal rise. But then this one that's happening now, it's Venus going all the way back behind the sun. So it's what's called apogee, furthest from Earth as possible. And she tends to disappear for like 60 to 100 days, depending on the sign and where you're looking from. And then will show up as an evening star in the west. So the idea of being reborn, in some regards, it probably works better on the morning side. And then there's this like initiation, there's this going into the cave, and that's a very different kind of a death and rebirth. And one of the things that I love so much about the way that I was taught this Venus cycle at the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School is they see that the great story of Inanna's descent into the underworld and return from the underworld, it's like the oldest story that we know of that was written or chiseled into tablets in Sumeria so long ago. Like they called Venus Inanna. So that story of Inanna's descent and like eventual rebirth and return, it's very much the story of Venus through the sky. And well, that's like a long wrap. I think I'll show a picture of it.
Sure,
Mostly, I want to talk about the significance of this Venus, as we call it, the Venus star point moving into Libra. So let me first show you why it's called a star point. Should I show some pictures?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let's dive in there. All right. So Venus has these conjunctions with the sun. There's what the astronomers call the inferior conjunction, which does not mean like lesser than, it means below. And many of us have come to call it the interior conjunction because it's when Venus is inside, like between Earth and the sun. And then there's this exterior conjunction, okay? And what you're seeing on this is 10 different Venus-Sun conjunctions between 2014 and 2022. And you can see that they draw this pentacle in the zodiac. So this is what people call the Venus star. It's one of the reasons probably the pentacle has long been associated with the goddess energy and the Venus energy. And that's a very long story itself. But
and
we're
money,
right here in October. We're coming into this star point in Libra. And this whole pentagram, so basically here we are, I'm going to say Capricorn, because the interior conjunction in January of 2022 is in the sign of Capricorn. And the next time Venus will become between Earth and Sun, it happens about every 19 months. That'll be here in Leo. And then there'll be one in Aries, and then one in Scorpio, and one in Gemini. So they basically do this like biquintile thing. That's the 144 degrees of like creating this pentacle in the sky.
Very cool.
And then the exterior star points are on the same places. I'm meant to be back here, and I'm going to get into our next section if we have time, into how this whole star itself is just slowly retrograding through the zodiac. So each of these star points, as we've come to call them, spend about 104 years in a sign, and then they'll retrograde back. So when we see this one here at 2926 Libra, that means it's the first time in Libra in a long time, because they're going to move retrograde through the zodiac. So this is an image of January 8th, 2022. And this is Venus retrograde, which AstroGold software is indicating with red font here. So the Venus-Sun conjunction, I can tell that that means Venus is in between Earth and Sun, right? And she's stationed retrograde like right at Pluto. And then she came between Earth and Sun in Capricorn. And so I think of this as a Capricorn cycle, like the intentions are Capricorn. Like, so whatever Venus means to you in your own chart or in your life, or for us in the mundane world globally, like we want new foundations, we want new traditions. And yet I see that those intentions, like a Venus setting between Earth and the Sun, are going to need to be initiated in this place where she goes back kind of into the wilderness, back behind the sun. And that's in the sign of Libra. So this whole cycle, and it's kind of a long story, it used to be Aquarius and Scorpio. And then for a long time, it's been Capricorn and Scorpio. And now for the first time in our lives, Capricorn and Libra. So here's these two charts next to one another. So January 2022 and October 2022, Venus between Earth and Sun in Capricorn, and Venus on the outside in Libra. And, you know, a kind of simple answer there, and I think it'd be fun to put this away and just rap about this a bit, Robert, but is we can't like set new traditions, new foundations, new governance, if you will, new Capricorn, without looking at the way that we're relating with one another, Libra, looking at harmony, balance, diplomacy, like in this time of just ridiculous division and you and the other right? Like that doesn't work in Libra realm, right? I mean, Libra is about me and the other, but it's us trying to see eye to eye and see the world through each other's eyes and that kind of thing. So I like the promise. And again, this is like the first of many, many cycles that will speak this way. So I don't think this happens immediately. That's something that's very much changed in my astrology over this last decade of, oh, like it's happening today, right? Like you watch these things and sometimes we get results like that, but usually it's like a seed is planted, it takes a while to sprout and all of that. I just want to share, well, maybe actually let's not get into this. This is one of the way that we work in the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School kind of ceremoniously with these Venus cycles. And yeah, people can pause this and read through that if you'd like. You can find me at geminibrett.com if you want to talk about this some, but it's the way that we work with the Moon Venus conjunctions during the course of these 19-month cycles, kind of clean the energy centers, the chakras, and go through our kind of emptying the vessel of death and rebirth and then reclaiming the strength of them. Yeah, Robert, before I dive back in there, I'm wondering, if we play with that model of, okay, Venus and these Capricorn intentions that necessitate Libra initiations, what comes in for you archetypally in response to a question like that?
I don't know. Making healthy boundaries in relationships.
Yeah, right on.
First thing that kind of popped into my mind when you said that.
I wonder about healthy relationships in boundaries. You know, if it kind of goes the other way, like Libra intentions with Capricorn initiations might be more like we can't do relationship without healthy boundaries, right? And this one might be like you can't do relationship if it's all boundaries, or if you can't do boundaries without relationship. I don't know, but I like that. That's a cool image for this. Yeah, and you know, how does that play for the world at large? And I guess one of my hopes here is that this is going to lead to, and I think we're seeing it, like there's this struggle for equality, equanimity, for balancing, but it also seems to me to be such a time of just absurd division. And like those who are most like fighting for equality or like fighting, and it's hard to have peace when there's a fight, you know, but hopefully that's what we see on the other side of this. And in a way, like the archetypes of these star points probably say that this is a time where we're meant to be in that kind of strength and a little bit of the fight, and then it's coming more towards ease and balance. So let me show that to you. Do you have anything you want to add there before I dive back into this?
Well, are you going to talk about the last time that Venus was in? We had a Cazimi in Libra.
Yeah, let me show you some of that. And this won't be
It's
the
been a
last
long
time
right?
there was a Cazimi in Libra, but the last time we had this shift from Scorpio to Libra.
From Scorpio to
So
Libra, yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
so these are the 5 star points again right now. And you know, speaking of dignities, look, it's been Scorpio. So traditionally this is a domicile of Mars. I mean, it's Mars's nocturnal domicile, but either way, Mars. It's been Aries, so Mars. And Capricorn, of course, the sign where Mars is said to be an honored guest or exalted, right? So 3 of these 5 Venus star points have been in signs like traditionally associated as strong places for Mars. And that's been going on for, almost a century. This is the astroseek.com. They have these wonderful ways to display things like this. And here we're looking from 1950 to 2000. And yeah, I'll just show you that, like if we have a point in Aquarius, it was followed by Virgo and then Aries and Scorpio and Cancer, like that. So eventually what was in Aquarius became Capricorn. What was in Virgo became Leo. What was in Cancer became Gemini. And for the last decades, we've been painting this Venus star as Capricorn, Capricorn, Leo, Aries, Scorpio, Gemini, Capricorn, Leo, Aries, Scorpio, Gemini, right? So we're coming into these other changes now. Here's 2000 to 2050. there's a little bit of a kind of glitchy thing going over here in Aries Pisces. But look,
Mm.
what was Scorpio heading now, and I'll show you how it's maybe not right now, also into Libra. What has been in Aries going to Pisces. And eventually, and it's not yet in this mix, but these points in Gemini will also go to Taurus. So it won't be too long where instead of having 3 of the 5 Venus points in Mars identified signs, Aries, Scorpio, and Capricorn, we'll have 3 of the 5 in Venus identified signs, Libra, Taurus, and Pisces, where Venus is said to be an honored guest or exalted, right? So I tightened up the window to take that glitch away.
Mhm.
I'm going to do one more thing here, which is to separate these in the interior conjunction. So when Venus is retrograde in between Earth and the Sun, and then the exterior.
Mm.
And what I want you to see here is this conjunction coming up. So this is October 22nd, 2022. That's that exterior one, where the interior star point that has been in Scorpio won't shift to Libra until 2034.
Oh.
And for me, that's the interior, kind of like a new moon is
Mhm.
interior. That's more about kind of the energetic intention of the cycle. And the exterior is like this initiatory place. So I think like this is beginning, but it won't really start shifting
Yeah.
until then. And so an interesting thing is looking to, well, when did the star last do this? And as I said before, each of the points tends to spend 104 years in a sign. That's 13 of these cycles, because I should say this as well. These stars are painted over the course of 8 Earth years. And every 8 Earth years, it comes back to the same sign, but it's retrograded like 2 calendar days and 2 degrees of the zodiac. So it's very slowly moving through the signs. It takes the entire star like 1250 years to go all the way around. So we really like, if we really wanted to track when the last time this thing happened, we would have to go back then, like 1250 years. However, this star point that's now in Leo, it came from Virgo. That came from Libra, right? That came from Scorpio. So there was a shift from Scorpio to Libra. Um, it was like the 1770s. Right. And I mean, this is pretty interesting because we're now
1770
looking
what?
Revolutionary War. Yeah. 1774, the so-called shot that's heard around the war, around the world. Right. 1776, obviously, Declaration of Independence. I think 1775, the shot heard around the world. 1783 over here, this is the Treaty of Paris. Right, which by all intents and purposes, I don't know. It's hard to say ended the war because did war ever end, you know? But the Constitution follows that, like capital set up in DC. Obviously, the French Revolution was on the heels of that, but it was a
Mm.
very revolutionary time. And of course, to bring this back to the financial focus of your podcast, what was that for that war fought over? Right? And you think about the Boston Tea Party and taxation and all of these things. So there's a whole nother section we can do here, but I'm thinking we're probably out of time, and maybe just reflections on what was shown there would be better use of what we've got.
Well, that's interesting, Brett, because as I'm sure you know, that also was the period where Pluto last ingressed into Aquarius. So that's kind of interesting to see those two things line up there. Essentially, what by your calculations there, the last time that the Venus Cazimi shifted from Scorpio into Libra was right around the same time Pluto ingressed into Aquarius, and
Yeah.
that's kind of a and we're seeing, and I mean, I'm just seeing this now for the first time myself, but you've probably been aware of that for longer. I mean, this is really interesting stuff, and my viewers can see that what a gifted technical astrologer you are to look at all of this really highly detailed mathematical information as well. But that's just a really interesting confluence there, really.
Yeah, and
So
it's this big archetypal shift. Like we lose these with the faster moving planets, right? When we look at like Pluto there's these age-long cycles. It's a 250-year-ish orbit. So many people are talking about this Pluto return for the, declaration chart, or the United States chart, as many call it now, right? I feel like not enough people are talking about that that's also Neptune opposite where it was back then. But we're also going to have a Uranus return.
Mm-hmm.
And all these things are happening in the context also of these greater cycles for the smaller planets, right? So the Venus star, it's like this amazing study of folks who want to pursue that further. There's a whole playlist at my YouTube, which is Gemini Brett, called The 13th Flower, where I kind of lay out what these synodic cycles are, and I've interviewed a bunch of people about how they work with it, in consultation and more in like natal astrology. Where it works in mundane astrology, I think is also, it's amazing and foundational. And I would really recommend the work of Ariel Gutman, who wrote the book called Venus Star Points there. Ariel's like a great astrologer. She's an elder in our community. And she's worked with this in mundane astrology a lot and looking at kind of some of the historical context. But I think tying it into the financial market, and Robert, I'll be really interested in seeing how this plays out in October. Like, it's kind of hard to imagine a bounce back, but it's not something I follow. So I'll be excited to follow your work and see like what kind of turn this makes in that financial realm as well.
Well, let's talk about this Venus Cazimi, and what would first of all, what do you think? How do you think that Saturn is also going to station direct that day?
On that day. Yeah.
How do you see? So how do you see that playing out? Like, what should we expect just over the next 10 days, 10 to 15 days? With this Venus Cazimi, what does that mean for people just, who want to understand what's going to happen over the next couple weeks?
Well, wheels within wheels, because it's hard to talk about this without also talking about the eclipse season which follows. But to address the Saturn thing, and also like the grand air trine you mentioned before, right? Because as we know, Mars is in Gemini for like ever. Mars tends to spend 2 months in a sign, 7 months in Gemini, because the entire Mars retrograde period is encapsulated within Gemini. So, I mean, I feel like all of these things, and a lot of this is just based upon my own hopes of what could happen at this time, is like some of the sources of some of this division that's happening, whether it's red and blue or what, this and that, any this and that. Like, I see a lot of like manipulated, intentional, divisive strategies that are kind of lurking. And I think some of that stuff's going to come up to the surface and give people the opportunity to choose to like bury the hatchet and start relating again. I can't tell you how many readings I'm doing with parents who are now separated from their children because of different political ideologies or things like this. It's just that pain of division right now just seems so strong. And it's my hope that Saturn's stopping and that Mars like really kind of bringing this heat in Gemini, which is a sign itself that kind of speaks about division, will tell us about like, it's one thing to recognize self and other. It's the other thing to like want to bring harmony and love and balance to that. And I feel like there's potential, there's a seeded potential in this Venus star point. And it's almost like maybe we need to feel that separation to want to come back together. Those are things I feel here. Eclipses in general are always portals of acceleration.
Well, hang on a sec. Let's get to that in a minute.
Sure.
I just want to, also just comment on that, which is, yeah, I mean, I think that, again, going back to the Hellenistic symbolism of, right, Venus is like an old woman dying going into that Cazimi, right? And then when she hits the exact Cazimi, which actually is kind of cool, right? Because it lasts for almost 3 or 4 days, really, depending on exactly what definition of Cazimi you use. But so it gives you a chance really to like work some things out. And so something may be dying right now. Relationships may be dying, or just certain where, depending on where, for individual people where it's falling in your chart, of course, we'll give you some clues about that. But I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I had one of my students, I remember there was like a combustion, going into the Cazimi, and like her father had fallen and broken his hip, and he was in the ICU, like, And then on the kazimi, he all of a sudden like came back to life, and they were like, oh, he's gonna live. And it was like
Wow.
so literal. Sometimes these things play out so literally, right? So anything could be like that right now in our lives. Something could really be a really difficult or even hopeless or discouraged situation, or it feels like something is dying. But the kazimi will give us, an opportunity for that rebirth and redemption. And in the sign of Libra, yeah, diplomacy and unity and love and working together, collaboration. So I think that's all really positive. But
Yeah, let me just interrupt, sorry, to say that if there are things in your lives, wherever this applies to anybody that's listening, go to the sun on October 22nd. Like Venus is, you can't see Venus, that's the point of this
right,
thing. Venus is behind the sun, but like close your eyes and look at the sun and just kind of send a message through the sun to Venus on the other side. Like if there's something in you that you're looking to assist through this kind of death and rebirthing process in regards to Libra and Venus themes like relationship and diplomacy and harmony and
yeah,
balance. Like this is a really powerful time. And it's not just as we're showing like the cycle for this year, this is like generations in a sense in the making.
mm,
So it's a really powerful magical portal to utilize for manifestation in your own life and seed planting. And Venus is going to become
yeah.
visible in the sunset west in like December time. Interestingly, right around the time of the Mars occultation on December 7th, but that's a tale for another date.
I mean, one of the things I think that, things have been rough, in general, I think, with the climate, crisis. I mean, just here in Seattle, we've really been enveloped in smoke for about 5 or 6 weeks now. There hasn't been any rain at all since
Mm.
June. And I know there's, horrible floods in Pakistan. We had terrible hurricane in Florida. I mean, people are suffering from the climate crisis. The markets have been down all year. Crypto's been down. Stocks have been getting pummeled. We have the war in the Ukraine. Like, there's just a lot of energy crisis in Europe. There's just a lot of bad stuff happening. A lot of real difficulties. And one of the things that we've been seeing is that Venus, which again really represents the good things in life, like the pleasures and the sweetness of life. Venus has just been getting its ass kicked. I mean, first of all, Venus was debilitated and then went combust in Virgo, right? So that was really ugly. And then, she finally gets dignity in the sign of Libra, but it's combust almost the entire time and doesn't hit Cazimi until the last degree. And some people would say that that last degree, that 29 degrees, the anaretic degree, it's not the most auspicious degree. So you've got that problem. And then Saturn stations that day. So I think there's a bit of heaviness and seriousness, even on this amazing Cazimi day. We still have to contend with Saturn's energy, which is that responsibilities and obligation and hard work. I mean, that's the best of Saturn, right? I mean, could be really difficult challenges, limitations, and difficulties as well. So, I mean, at least it's turning direct, so maybe there's a positive there. But so
But then
even on
Mars
this,
retrogrades.
what's that?
Then Mars retrogrades, right? I mean, that's a key
Yeah.
about like a grand trine with the sun. The outer planets
Mm,
station around the time of solar retrograde. So as like Saturn stops to go forward, Mars will then stop to go retrograde on October 30th, right?
yeah,
So
October 30th.
right in
Yeah.
this eclipse season. So yeah, I
So
mean,
yeah,
again,
after the Kazemi, that's then we're heading into some really, I think, dark, difficult terrain, because we do, as you said, we go immediately into the eclipses and to Mars retrograde, and also Jupiter retrogrades back into Pisces at the same. So there's a lot of shifts take place in the last 7 days. Well, first of all, Venus goes into Scorpio on the 23rd, right? So like right after the Cazimi is kind of a brutal shift into that, debilitation, and then combustion, and then approaching the South Node, which is a bit stressful. And then, yeah, Jupiter retrogrades into Pisces, which some astrologers, are saying, it's positive, but for crypto specifically and Bitcoin, we know it hasn't been positive. Uh,
interesting. Just Jupiter and Pisces in general hasn't been positive for crypto.
No, it's been like kryptonite. The two previous periods of Jupiter and Pisces in 2021 and 2022 were absolutely terrible for
Huh.
cryptocurrency specifically. There's
And were
something about
things better
Jupiter.
when Jupiter ingressed Aries in between? Did it sort out a little bit?
No, it did not get better. It did not get dramatically better in Aries either,
Mm.
except for that brief period during the summer when you had Uranus and the node conjunction. There was about a 5-6 week rally across the global financial markets. But as soon as Uranus and the node started separating, then that rally really fizzled out. We just went back into the bear market again. So, and that's actually an interesting question. This is a whole other kind of unrelated topic, but Jupiter in Aries was bullish for markets the previous 4 cycles going back 50 years to 1972. This was the first time that Jupiter in Aries was not bullish for markets in 50 years. So that was a bit surprising. We thought there would be some relief there. But yeah, we're shifting right out of that Cazimi right into the eclipses. And Venus is actually partile conjunction to that October 25th eclipse. I've talked to a couple of astrologers. I mean, I know Austin Coppock thinks that that is not good. That Venus is going to, anything that gets caught in an eclipse, it gets really, gets really mashed up. So do
They're
you think the
interestingly
Cazimi
in
effect will?
Venus and Mars signs as well, right? So we have the Scorpio solar
Yeah.
eclipse and then the Taurus lunar eclipse. So there's, it'd be interesting to know individually where your Taurus and Scorpio houses are, like in Libra leading into that. Like if we want to take this more
For individual
personally,
people. I mean,
yeah.
technically, the October 25th eclipse, Venus is still Cazimi.
Yeah, yeah, if you're using a degree,
Yeah.
absolutely. And right, remember this, the whole star is going backwards. Venus, of course, at this time is not. So there's something about her in a way bringing that Kazemi energy into Scorpio to like remember where she's coming from and actually where she still is, because again, like the interior Venus star point won't shift until 2034. I don't like the last time Venus had a star point in Scorpio was October of 2018. So that might be a time to remember. Like, I don't know. I mean, eclipses can
Oh,
be
yeah.
absolutely haunting, and sometimes they are the most beautiful. I need to be careful. Like, this one's on my sun. My solar returns on the 24th. So, like, I don't want to like call in the ghosts here, but I've seen eclipses in my own life. Like, they put me on the map in astrology
Yeah.
with my career, and sometimes
Interesting.
they take like, the phases of that typically take a month, and they happen in the case of a solar eclipse in hours, or in lunar or minutes and lunar hours. They can be like kind of like acceleration portals. So yeah, I try not to rose colored glasses with these things. I mean, the more astrology you watch, I think the more difficult that gets to be, but the more people I connect with, the more I can also stay optimistic, because I'm consistently sitting with amazing human beings who are like working with this sacred science as you and I are, to like activate and walk their path, and like choose change in times of distress. And I think that that's part of what the Kazimis teach us, is like, or the combustion, like there's always in life, in all cycles, going to be these times where we have to kind of go into the fire and compost what we've learned, so we can create new rich soil for new seeds to grow. And I think we're very much in that time right now. So I'm less inclined to say, and by February, it looks, this one feels like more like a seed that's been being planted, that in a sense is going to take decades to really like show itself beautifully. But I do look at that correspondence to the revolutionary times and industrial revolution, a lot of things, like speaking about the climate change and whatever, right? We're like on some levels in a different place of wisdom or gnosis or experience, and hopefully we work with it in I don't know, in a better way this time. But you can also just kind of see history repeating itself. And so there's one other piece I'd share, which I think is a little bit more hopeful. Let me actually share a picture around this. And this has to do with like the harmonic situation. So you see this like little zodiac inside the zodiac here. But what that is the fifth harmonic. So if we divide the circle by 5, we get 72-degree sections like this, and you can map the zodiac there. So when I look at this Venus star point that's coming, and see, this is the particular aspect I really like to tune into here. It's called a biquintile. So the quintile is 1/5 of a circle. It's 72 degrees. The biquintile is twice that. It's 144 degrees. It's basically the pentacle angle. And if we map then both the Venus Cazimi here in the really last degree of tropical Libra and Neptune, who's been in Pisces for a long time, you'll see in the fifth harmonic, which not only divides the circle into 5, but divides each of the signs into 5. So you'll see 5 little mini signs here in each sign, okay? So the way this works in a so-called fifth harmonic chart is you get that Venus Cazimi conjoin Neptune. And in the sign of Aquarius, which itself, it's kind of like, revolution necessary, change necessary, but like higher insight. And when we do this in a Neptunian way, it says bring compassion, right? Bring spirit, bring vision, bring dream, bring manifestation, and I think that's important for us to remember about Venus. Like Venus, especially as morning star, and this is the end of the morning star period, like, Venus can be badass. And I think we oftentimes forget that in modern times, like the way that the Mesoamerican astronomers were working with Venus, or I mean, even in Greece back in the day, like there's a different name for morning star Venus and evening star Venus. As we're shifting to the evening star side, as we're shifting to the Libra energy, there's something that's called on for us to be more powerful in our visions and our kind of nightly ways. And I love this biquintile with Neptune, who says like, keep the faith and remember like the power of dreaming and the power of art. Like that's going to be necessary to see us through. So I think that's probably the best I can do for us to end on a good note here, Robert. No doubt we're in powerful times, and I'm very interested in seeing and watching your work and seeing how this plays out financially. But I think in our own lives, we're planting a seed for things to look much better in some years from today than they do right now. So keep the faith, keep walking through this thing, keep helping others if you are doing this in a good way and keeping perspective. Like folks need like all hearts on right now. So that Venus should always remind us of that.
Yeah, and this is essentially, I mean, what we're talking about today, at least, this Venus Cazimi in Libra is a hopeful event. It's one of the really positive things at the end of the year, in the last couple of months of the year, and it is, it's a magical alchemical, alignment, and people can use it for magic and ceremony and rituals, or just for setting intentions and prayers and meditation. And this is, we got to make the most of this, because as we're saying, we're not really going to talk about the eclipses today, but the eclipses are, they're like a stress test. They're more stressful, challenging, and then Mars is going retrograde. So we're after this Venus Cazimi, we're going into a more potentially stressful period. It's not necessarily a bad period. Eclipses aren't, bad per se. Good things can definitely happen. But eclipses, at least for the markets, they tend to be kind of extreme. They tend to make for extreme emotions. And you can see sometimes panic sell-offs during eclipse season. You can also sometimes see big rallies, big FOMO rallies, like the August of 2017. Bitcoin specifically went up like 150% on that total. That was a total solar eclipse. That was actually was favorable for cryptocurrency markets. I believe that eclipse was in that really interesting. Wasn't that in a grand trine with like Saturn and Uranus or something like that?
The so-called Great American Eclipse,
Yeah,
August 21st,
I mean,
2017.
that was obviously there was a lot going on with politics and things, but I'm just saying, like, eclipses, they're not always bad. They can be stressful, but sometimes, they can also bring a big breakthrough. I think what you said, personally for yourself there. So um, and I know in Tibetan Buddhism, and also in like a lot of the Vedic and yoga teachings, that eclipses are really great to do meditation, mantra, and prayers, and make offerings, and that helps to kind of soften the energy a little bit, help us get through those days. especially if it's really hitting your chart really hard. But I think this has been a great discussion on this Venus Cazimi, and in Libra, I think hopefully it will bring a healing. I mean, I don't know if we're going to see a resolution of the war in Ukraine. Maybe we'll see some diplomatic breakthrough. I don't know. Maybe not, but at least there's some potential here for some type of healing and unification, and a healing in relationships, and a new era, maybe the beginning of really of a new era of healing, like in interpersonal relationships and globally, diplomatically. Maybe we'll see some shifts starting to take place, like you're saying. They may take a long time to actually come to fruition, but maybe we're going to see the beginning of some changes with this new Cazimi in Libra.
Yeah, my feeling is that by the interior star point shift in 2034, I mean, I know that's some
Oh my
time from
God, that's a
now,
long
but
time away. That's a
but
long
that we're
time
like
away.
we're now moving towards that, and that it will be very clear that we've kind of come out of a storm on that side of things. I mean, I'm almost sure about that. But there's things that we can do more immediately. But hopefully, folks who haven't looked at these Venus stars today have at least seen that, like, even these inner planets, they have long cycles too. And you can look deep into history around the Venus star. It's an amazing thing. And so, anyway, may the goddess
Yeah.
shine and lead us through this madness. Thanks for having me on, bro.
Thanks for guiding us through the Venus star and all of that information. Gemini, do you have any workshops, seminars, classes, events that you have coming up?
I am just on the other, speaking of peace, I'm on the other side of working for every astrological organization I'm aware of. Since I saw you at the ESAR conference, I've
Uh-huh.
like had a thing every week, and on top of my own school. So I have a school, it's called the School of Earth Astrology.
Okay.
And I'm in the midst of what's called the Golden Year, and anyone can catch up with it now. So if you like the way that I teach, head over to geminibrett.com. And you'll see on the courses pages some information about the School of Earth Astrology, and also my Sacred Astronomy for Astrologers course if you're interested in adding some of the physical, the astronomical to your astrological work. And then at geminibrett.com, you can also sign up on my mailing list. Next year, I'm going to do a lot of like kind of topic focused workshop mini courses. So I've got one on Mercury cycles that I'm building right now, on eclipses that I'm building right now, on astrolocality and some other things. So that's just a place to go find out what I'm up to. And yeah, man, it's so great to reconnect. I was really happy to see you in Colorado, and it's nice to spend some time here together. And I look forward to tracking the financial market and bringing some abundance in.
Well, we might have to wait till next year for that.
Let me
Certainly,
know.
I'm not forecasting a very good season here for the next couple months, but I do think that things will be a little bit more hopeful next year. Um, if you like the information here, that we've been presenting, you can also check out my website, which is astrocryptoreport.com. Of course, you guys can always follow me on Twitter. I'm CryptoDamus, and my handle is at AstroCryptoGuru. And I also have a Patreon, which you can find on that website, and that'll all be posted here on the video information. But thanks for joining us today, guys. And Gemini, Brett, thank you so much for this really interesting information and perspective on this upcoming Venus Cazimi, and wish you success in your astrology work.
Right on, and same to you, brother. Hope to see you on Earth again sometime soon. Be well.